I was very excited by the premise of Colossal. A giant monster attacking Seoul is being controlled by an alcoholic woman in the US. I love kaiju movies, I love Korean movies, and this concept was too good for me not to see. We may be living through the best time for kaiju movies in history. As movies like The Host, Cloverfield, Pacific Rim, and Shin Godzilla have demonstrated, people who watched giant monster movies as kids grew up to make very clever, creative, and different movies in this genre. All of these movies try something new with the formula, and all of them are contenders for the top 20 or even top 10 giant monster movies of all time. Colossal, sadly, isn't even a contender for the top 100. It doesn't have a whole lot of giant monster action in it, which isn't a problem for me if what we're seeing for the majority of the movie is meaningful, entertaining, or, good. But what we see in Colossal isn't those things. For a movie that tries to rely on its subtext to carry it, Colossal is surprisingly shallow. When you're making a monster movie like this that has a low percentage of monster screen time, the spectacle isn't going to be enough to carry it, so you have to provide something more for the rest of the movie. But particularly near the end, Colossal feels like it's trying to use the little spectacle it has to distract you from the fact that it has no real substance to it. But despite all its major flaws, the most disappointing thing about Colossal, which I should probably pick up at this point, the most disappointing thing about Colossal's story is that it has an antagonist. Like, not a metaphorical antagonist, an actual real guy who's a jerk for no real reason. Some movies don't need antagonists, and believe it or not, this does still apply when you're making monster movies. Try to tell me who the antagonist is in King Kong. Kong is the character who causes the most damage, but you still sympathize with him for a significant part of the movie, particularly the climax. But just because you're on Kong's side for the Empire State Building battle doesn't make the biplane pilots the antagonists. Colossal wants to be a monster movie with a twist, but it doesn't really care what monster movie it wants to be. For example, Cloverfield is essentially a Godzilla movie, with the twist being that it's a found footage movie from the point of view of somebody witnessing the attack. Now, if Colossal had thought about it this way and been King Kong with a twist, it could have been a great movie. Structurally speaking, King Kong would have been the perfect model for Colossal, because I thought the whole point of Colossal was to have a giant monster who's also a sympathetic character, but also having the destruction that monster causes represent the actions of somebody when they're drunk. So the conflict should be about Gloria overcoming the monster inside her. It shouldn't be about Gloria being blackmailed by a robot to work in a bar or else he'll destroy Seoul. In the movie I thought this would be, Gloria didn't have to go to the park at a certain time to control her monster, and we didn't get some stupid explanation as to why this is all happening, because the movie isn't better for showing us that one time that Gloria was struck by lightning in the place where the park would later be built while she was in the vicinity to an action figure that looks like her monster now. We don't need any of that. When your vague plot synopsis says that an alcoholic woman is somehow connected to a giant monster attacking Korea, that makes me think that the alcoholism is represented by the giant monster. And in the real movie, it isn't. They somehow managed to miss that, and because of that, the movie means absolutely nothing. Here is how you make Colossal a good movie. Gloria is an alcoholic. When she gets drunk, a giant monster appears in Korea and mimics her movements. When Gloria wakes up the next day, she doesn't remember the night before, but she sees the aftermath of a giant monster in Seoul. Then she slowly figures it out and realizes she has to stop drinking, but she's an alcoholic, so naturally that's not easy. If you need help making that bit, just watch A Liar's Autobiography. At some point in the movie, a government agency figures out that she's involved somehow and either arrests her or monitors everything she does, and arrests her later on in the movie. The idea behind Colossal suggests that it should be a movie all about consequences. Being an alcoholic has consequences, and when you tell me your movie's about an alcoholic who controls a giant monster, I think that movie is about magnifying those consequences. Now, instead of waking up with a hangover and a regrettable voice message on somebody's answering machine, she wakes up with a hangover and a leveled city square on the news. But the Colossal that I saw contains no consequences for Gloria whatsoever. Nobody ever finds out she's involved, nobody's mad at the monster, let alone her, and she gets away with literal murder without even feeling a little bit guilty. And besides that, what was set up as a story where Gloria has to overcome her alcoholism ends up being a run-of-the-mill good triumphs over evil, now let's go have a drink story. No, that's not run-of-the-mill, that's just dumb. Basically, I just wish the makers of Colossal had just stopped to think about it a bit more, because this premise got me really excited about all the things you could do with it, when you stop to think about it. Take Cloverfield. It has a similar kind of concept, with the twist being that it's a monster movie that's also a found footage movie. They made that premise work by thinking about all of its potential, all the directions they could go with it. The characters could get caught in the escaping crowd that you usually see from a distance in a Godzilla movie. They could get caught between the military and the monster. They could find a civilian shelter underground. They could know somebody trapped in a toppled building that they then make their way to save her. I don't think the makers of Colossal thought about all the possibilities in the same way, and because of that, it ends up just being a weird, convoluted, forgettable, disappointing mess of a movie. But because the movie Colossal could have been, I hope movies like this keep getting made. Just let me make them. Please. Somebody let me make a monster movie, I promise it'd be good. Colossal, sadly, isn't even a contender for the top 100.